right.
Hello.
Welcome to My Thing, Your Thing.
With Hannah.
And Donovan.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good. So, this, dear listeners, is going to be a bit of an experiment. You may know I am a musician. I'm really into music, specifically into, 90s music. A lot of, semi-obscure 90s alt-rock bands. That's kind of my thing.
If you were also into semi-obscure 90s alt-rock bands, you'll know who he's talking about. If you are, I don't know, Gen Z or millennial, and the only thing that you know from the 90s is Nirvana, then, hoo boy, are we in for a ride?
Yeah. No, I want to put a spotlight on some of these artists because most of them are still around.
Yeah.
They're still touring. They're still making albums, and I think they're great. So I'm going to share one of those bands that I really love. I am going to have the music on this podcast for you to listen to. That means that it might get taken down. Obviously, I don't own the rights to it or anything, but this is a sharing with you, fair use kind of thing. And if it gets taken down, I'll have a Spotify playlist that I'll link. In fact, I'll link the Spotify playlist no matter what, because it's going to have some songs that I'm not going to play on here as well. Just as a good primer for this is what the band sounds like. And I'm sharing this out of love. This is not me trying to make any money off of this or anything like that. I want people to listen to these bands. I really do. And I hope to do more of these episodes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So, I'm going to set the scene. The year is 1992. Hannah.
I was 3 years old.
Okay, but... Hannah.
Yeah.
You are an A&R person for a record label.
Little 3-year-old me?
Yes. 3-year-old Hannah, you. They want to know what the kids are into, and they just had to keep going younger and younger.
Oh, it was Sherry Lois and Bram for sure. Skinamarink is a song and not just a horror movie. Look it up, friends.
Yeah. The year is 1992.
Sure.
Right now, American alternative is the biggest fucking thing in the world.
Yeah.
Everyone is into all kinds of alternative rock, but specifically they're into Seattle alternative rock. They're into grunge.
Yes, they are.
It's the big thing. Everyone's super excited about it. There's Nirvana, there's Soundgarden, there's Pearl Jam, there's Alice in Chains, and I could list 100 million other bands.
Flannel prices are going through the roof.
Through the roof.
This is not a joke. That's one of the, flannels used to be the thing that, poor people wore, and then grunge got really big, and then everybody started making, $30 flannel shirts.
Yes, it was a true harsh realm when our wax lax got so expensive when we were hanging on the flippity flop.
I'm sorry, continue.
So you're an A&R person for a record label, and you have been tasked with finding the next Seattle. What's the next local scene where there's a bunch of really good bands out there that nobody's heard about?
Portland?
No, although there were some great alternative bands in Portland. Absolutely.
Austin, Texas.
Austin, I think came a little later. Weird Austin was a little bit later.
Okay.
There were some cool bands from Austin at the time, though.
Cleveland rocks?
No. Cleveland was very uncool in the 90s.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I love Cleveland. Cleveland's great. No, so there was a big search among people for a while of where to find the next Seattle, whatever that would be. There were a couple of towns that were right at the top of that list. Probably the one that most people would know is Chicago, obviously.
Yeah.
Huge city. Chicago was kind of the second city of alternative rock. That was where the Smashing Pumpkins were from. It even had a big indie label like Sub Pop for Seattle. They had Touch and Go, which had a bunch of crazy good bands. But Chicago, it wasn't as insular as Seattle was. Chicago was a bigger city. It was already more pop culturally relevant.
Sure.
So a lot of these scenes that people kind of thought of were smaller, specifically college rock scenes.
Yeah.
In the 80s, Athens, Georgia, which is where University of Georgia is, that was where REM and the B-52s came from. Washington, D.C. in the late 70s, early 80s was where the Discord Records thing happened. That was where Minor Threat and Fugazi and the Bad Brains and stuff came from. There were those scenes that were around. A few cities that were called the next Seattle. Lawrence, Kansas, weirdly.
Okay.
Lawrence, Kansas had a couple of bands like Paw and a few others that got semi-popular but didn't really take off. That's where Kansas University is. Weirdly, there was a thing called the Halifax Sound in Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Sloan came from there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like there were a bunch of like kind of bands that got big in the 90s from Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada.
Good for them.
Good for them. But today, I'm going to be talking about my favorite of all of these like little indie scenes from the 80s and 90s. And that would be the Chapel Hill scene.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I should have guessed Chapel Hill.
Yep. Sometimes also called the Triangle scene. Chapel Hill exists within what is called the Research Triangle of North Carolina, sometimes just called the Triangle. The Triangle is 3 cities. It's Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
Raleigh is the capital of the state. That's where NC State is. Durham is another big city right over there. That's where Duke University is. And then Chapel Hill is where the University of North Carolina is. So it's a very well-educated area. There's a lot of young people, a lot of college students. It's a good, fertile ground for a lot of music to happen.
Yeah, my stepbrother went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and that's where he met his wife.
Yeah, there you go. I have only really driven through there. I've never like really spent time there, but to this day, there's still tons of music in that area. Like, there just is.
Yeah.
Aside from the band we're going to talk about today, there was a band called Archers of Loaf, which I could almost do an episode about on their own. I love Archers of Loaf. They're great. Go listen to Icky Metal. That's their album. That's their best one. They have so many good ones.
What a goddamn name. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Icky Metal? Hell yeah.
Yeah. Great band. There was a band called Polvo that was from there. Polvo was kind of like a lo-fi indie band. Also very cool. Probably the one that got the most famous was the Ben Folds 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love those guys.
They were really the ones that like signed to a major label and got really big. Everyone else kind of stayed indie, you know?
Yeah.
But the band that is my favorite from this time period, from this area, and I think kind of the central band, you'll understand why when I mention this a little bit later, they're kind of, I think, the most important to the scene, is the band Superchunk.
Hey.
Yeah.
Wearing the shirt right now.
Yeah, I am. I'm wearing the Superchunk shirt that I bought when I saw them live, the one time I saw them live, and I love them so very much. So, the story of Superchunk starts in the mid to late 80s. It was founded mainly by 2 members. There's a guy by the name of Mac McCaughan. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's like McCaughan. I think it's Mac McCaughan. That's
okay.
That's how I've heard it pronounced.
That sounds about right to me.
And Laura Balance.
Okay.
Mac was from Durham. He went to Columbia University in New York City for college. Went there for a few years. But after he was done there, he kind of was like, I'm going to move back to North Carolina and do music there because music is really cool down there. I don't think he was disillusioned or whatever with New York City. It's just, you have connections in a place already, and New York City's a hard place to be.
It also would have been way less expensive to live in North Carolina than New York at the time.
Almost certainly. And so he moves back down, and he moves to Chapel Hill, and he starts a couple of bands. There's a few. The one that was probably the most well-known was a band called the Slush Puppies. They opened for Fugazi, like early on. Pretty decent. He started working at a pizza shop, and there he got to know a woman named Laura Balance.
Uh-huh.
She was from Raleigh. She was like in the punk scene, but she at the time was not a musician. She wasn't playing any instruments or anything like that. She also started to work at this pizza place, and the 2 of them became really good friends, and they kind of decided, hey, let's do a band.
Sure.
She had gotten a bass. There was a funny story I heard. She was talking on NPR. Is like her roommate got a Budweiser can bass, and she was like, I want to learn to play bass. And Mac was like, I'll teach you. And so he started teaching her bass, and then they kind of started a romantic relationship, and they started a band. And they kind of said that the band was sort of an excuse for them to spend a lot of time together, That's
a little bit cute and also a little bit concerning.
Yeah. And you know what? Those are both correct.
Yeah.
So
you don't need an excuse to hang out with somebody if you just like them. You can just hang out and go to the roller rink. Although we did apparently get a whole bunch of really cool music out of it, so
Exactly. I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah.
They got 2 of their friends to play with them. There was a guy by the name of Jack McCook to play guitar, and they got a guy by the name of Chuck Garrison to play drums. Chuck Garrison was in the phone book incorrectly. He was listed as Chunk Garrison. So they named the band Chunk It turned out there was already a band named Chunk, so they became Superchunk
Superchunk.
in the long tradition of bands having to change their name to something slightly different.
Because there's already a band named that.
Yep, absolutely. They kind of started this band on a whim, but it was fairly popular. Laura Balance kind of talked about how like Raleigh was more of like a hardcore scene, whereas Chapel Hill, it was a little goofier, it was a little more fun.
Sure.
And Superchunk was a big part of that. Their first big single, like the song that kind of like defined them and people really liked, was a song called Slack Motherfucker. After Laura and Mac worked at the pizza shop, they both worked at a Kinko's, and apparently they worked with a guy who didn't do any work. That guy sucked. So they wrote this song about him being a lazy motherfucker, and that is the song that we are going to listen to first. It is going to be Slack Motherfucker.
Side note, do Kinko's still exist? Can you still go to a Kinko's?
No. So apparently that Kinko's that they worked at still exists, but it's like a FedEx now.
Sure, that makes sense.
But it's basically the same thing. All right. We're going to listen to that now.
Heck yeah.
So that was Slack Motherfucker. Yeah, you know, for a first attempt, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, like, it's fun, you know. I like the little, like, just, you haven't moved from that spot all night. I'll kick that stool right out from under you. It's that kind of, like, pissy, angry that you are when you're young. And
yeah. When you're young and you're working kind of a dead-end job, and
Yeah.
like you're just annoyed that whoever you're working with is not actually pulling their weight.
Mhm.
And I can see why it would take off in sort of more like a college town kind of environment.
Absolutely. And kind of, you know, this song came out in 1989 when it was released as a single. So, like, this is pre-grunge. This is like, the big alternative rock explosion. And so at this time, you know, slacker rock was kind of like the term. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people really were like, you know, oh, this is the music for college kids who don't want to get a real job, that kind of thing. And it just kind of really hit the zeitgeist,
Want to hang out in their beanbag and smoke weed all day long.
Exactly, yeah. Really fun stuff. This song has kind of become like sort of an anthem for them. Like, I don't think it's their best song. I don't think this album or this era is like their best sound. But this song has like kind of stuck around as the one that people really love from them. And I can see why.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of fun on that. So they actually founded their own record label to release this song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they were like, kind of already established in the scene. Mac had been in a bunch of bands, and so they were like, let's start a label. So Mac and Laura start Merge Records.
Mm-hmm.
You own Merge Records albums. I know 100% you do.
Okay.
We will get to it.
Okay.
The next year, 1990, they sign a deal with Matador, which is another great indie label that I'm a big fan of. I mean, they've released Pavement, Teenage Fan Club, Slater-Kinney, Modest Mouse, Queens of the Stone Age, Yo La Tango. That's a record label that,
lots of very famous bands are on.
Yes. Like one of the, I would say, upper echelon indie labels, They signed that. Cool thing about this deal is that while Matador is putting out Superchunk's albums, they're letting Superchunk put out all their singles on Merge. Like, they're letting them kind of do their own thing with their singles while they're doing their albums. That's a really cool thing to do, to kind of give them the freedom to do that.
Yes.
I think that's awesome.
I mean, especially with, like, how a lot of record industry stuff goes, with, like, how possessive a lot of labels are over their artists and their artist output.
Yeah.
To be able to be like, yeah, you can put out singles on a different label. That's pretty rad and chill.
We're cool with that. And so they signed a 3-album deal, which is a normal thing to do at the time with an indie label. Is like, we're going to make 3 albums with you, and then we'll kind of see how that goes. That first album is self-titled, and there's some pretty good songs on the album. One's called My Noise, which actually ended up being the title of the book about Superchunk and Merge Records. It was called My Noise, which I think is cute. My Noise and Slack Motherfucker are like the 2 really good songs on it. There are some other solid ones, but that's the 2 like standout tracks.
Sure.
For all of their albums, I'm going to kind of point out the tracks that I think are like the standout tracks, and those are the ones that are going to be on the playlist.
Nice.
Yeah. After this album came out, Jack McCook would leave the band, and he would be replaced by a guy named Jim Wilbur. Jim Wilbur was friends with Mac's roommate when he was at Columbia University, and he actually moved down from, like, Connecticut to North Carolina to kind of be part of the music scene.
Oh, nice.
And there was definitely a feeling, I think, from some people that there was, like, something really cool going on down here.
Sure.
And so, he joins the band here, and they would then go into work on their second album, called No Pocky for Kitty.
Pocky is spelled like the Japanese candy?
It is the Japanese candy.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is. I didn't find really anything about this, but there's a couple of points in their history where it seems like Superchunk appreciated Japanese culture more than like the average person would at the time. Like nowadays, like everyone watches anime.
Sure, yeah.
Everyone eats Pocky and listens to, J-pop or whatever.
Yeah, ramen is like the number 3 most popular food in America.
Yeah, they seem to be ahead of their time on that. This album would be recorded by the legendary Steve Albini, who had just worked with the Pixies and stuff and would be like 2 years away from working with Nirvana.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, he did not have a producer credit. He kind of didn't believe in that, but he worked with them on this. And this album would come out like the next year, and they're furiously touring at the time.
Sure.
Right before the album came out, after it was recorded, Chuck left the band and was replaced by drummer John Worster. John Worster, we'll talk about some of the stuff he did later, because that's also really interesting, but at this point he had been in a band called The Right Profile, which was a band that was signed to a major label. One of the founders of that band was the guy who wrote Freakonomics, like the book.
Really?
Yeah.
Wild.
Some weird, connections there. That band, like, he was in that band from, like, the late 80s until, like, 1991, but they never really did anything. But he was, like, a career drummer. He was, like, trying to find a band to be a part of.
Sure.
And no slight to Chuck Garrison, the namesake of the band. I think he's good. Mm-hmm. John Worster is better.
Sure.
Like, he just kind of brings, like, a whole other level of drumming to it. He's not on this record that we'll hear here in a second, but he's on the one after that, and it's immediately, like...
better.
I think it's better. Standout tracks on this one, for No Pocky for Kitty, there's one called Seed Toss, which is really good, another one called Throwing Things, but we are going to listen to Skip Steps 1 and 3, which is the opening track, and it is like some pure like pop punk like energy. I just love this song.
Sure.
I almost didn't have a song from this album, but I was like, man, we got to have this song. It's so good. So here is Skip Steps 1 and 3.
Yeah, that was rad.
Yeah.
Like, I can totally imagine a bunch of like punk kids in a dive bar somewhere, like slam dancing to that in like 1992 or whatever.
It's got a great like sing along chorus.
It does, yeah.
I'm a sucker for a good sing along chorus. I just am. Like, I was really into punk, especially like pop punk when I was in high school, and then I kind of like got into like stoner rock and metal and stuff, and so I kind of like left that. But God, like a good like sing along punk chorus, like you really can't beat it.
Yeah, a good like melodic like chant.
Yeah. And I love, at this point, Superchunk, they're kind of writing their songs a little bit about everything. Like there's not like one theme that they're really sticking to. This one kind of feels like just a classic like, young person, like I got to get my life going kind of song.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful. Like I just really like this song. And a lot of people really like this album. This album kind of like took them up a notch, I think it's a better album than their first one. It's not like giant leaps forward, but it definitely opened them up to a bigger audience, and it like really fit into the like alternative landscape at the time. And this is 1991, so alternative is about to hit hard.
Yeah, it is.
Right around this time, they would release a comp of some of their early singles and B-sides called Tossing Seeds. A couple of standouts on that. There's one called Fishing, which is really good. They also did a cover of a song by Sebadoh that I love called Brand New Love. Their cover of it is really good. I like the Sebadoh version better, but that's fine, whatever. Like, it's still a great cover. In 1992, they did a European tour with Mudhoney.
Well, dang.
Speaking of Seattle grunge,
Yeah.
you know. And they were on the cover of NME magazine, New Musical Experiments.
Wow.
Yes, which is like a British magazine.
Yeah.
This is not the most popular Superchunk would ever be, but if you were the kind of person who thought Superchunk was going to be like huge, this is kind of the moment where that seemed like it was possible.
Right. This is like the crust before the break.
Yeah, exactly. Like they were kind of rising in popularity, and this was, like I said, it was 1991, 1992. It really literally felt like anybody who played guitar and wore a flannel shirt could be a superstar.
Yes.
You know, it was like a crazy time for music, and, you know, it was awesome. 92, I was also the year I was born. You know, what can I say?
Never lived in a world without Superchunk the band.
Oh, man. Well, actually, yeah, you're right. That's true.
Uh-huh.
They did go on a little bit of a hiatus at one point, but we'll get there. In 1993, they would do their third album called On the Mouth. This is their first one with their like classic lineup. So Mac, Laura, John, and Jim. And this is kind of, I think, the beginning of what their fans consider like their peak period.
Okay.
You know, like these next 3 albums are usually the ones that when people say, like, what's the best Superchunk album, they're going to say one of these 3. Some people will be weird and say a different one, but like 90% of the answers are going to be one of these next 3 albums. On the Mouth is, I would say, maybe arguably like their most like punk, even more than their first 2. Like, they get pretty hard on this one. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the time period, 93, you know.
Yeah, I can see that. That would be the end of, like, the 80s punks and the beginning of more, like, the garage rock kind of punk sort of thing going on. And definitely, like, right at the very beginning of... I know that in the late 90s there was a lot of rebelling against, like, you know, the bubblegum pop scene sort of thing, which is what really came in through in the later 90s. So, like, the very beginning, like, 90... What do you say, 93?
This is 93, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been like the very beginning of that wave.
Yeah, and you know, like it was kind of a period of time, like I said, where it kind of felt like anything could make it.
Yeah.
You know, like you were a year away from Dookie, Green Day.
Yeah.
You know, that was the year that, you know, like Nirvana was huge and Pearl Jam was huge and Soundgarden was huge, but also like Primus was big. Like, you know, really literally anything.
There was also like a lot of like weird shit that was getting on the radio in the 90s that like the 90s was such like a hothouse incubator for like strange songs that were like bands that were popular for like a week in like the summer of one year in the 90s. And then like, you know, all of the rest of us for the rest of our lives are just singing how bizarre. Yeah, like
you're not wrong. You're totally not wrong. This one, a couple of great standouts on this one too. A song called Package Thief that's really good.
Nice.
It's about basically his packages keep getting stolen from his house. There's one called The Question Is How Fast, which is pretty cool. This one is Precision Auto. Precision Auto has been covered by Jimmy Eat World.
Nice.
And a couple of other bands. It remains like a favorite.
Yeah.
There was a subreddit called Indie Heads that did their top 10 Superchunk songs. This was number 2. I don't have it that high, but it is a great song.
Sure.
And so we're going to listen to Precision Auto.
if you ever want to know exactly what 1993 looked like, it's that video.
Yeah, that video really is.
It's an amazing time capsule.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah, the cars, like the streets,
the fashion, just like, there's a lot of retro stuff.
Yeah.
Like trying to imitate 90s VHS quality. There's nothing that's ever going to actually be 90s VHS quality unless you get like a VHS recorder.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's a fun song.
It's good, yeah.
It's a really good song, and you can really tell, I think, if you look at the lyric sheet, that like he's getting better at like writing songs that have like simple lyrics but have like a meaning. You can really like get into it.
Yeah.
I love the lyrics. That's the second verse. Yeah, the second verse. It's like, I see you way too slow. I see you in slow motion. You've got muscles, use them. Don't hand me a chapter. Don't hand me a story. I will only lose them.
Yeah.
Like that's a really cool, like, fucking get out of my way.
Yeah.
Like, don't bring me down.
Yeah.
Do not pass me just to slow down.
There's also like, I don't listen to a whole lot of like punk or like grunge punk because I tend to find that a lot of bands go for like loud and fast as opposed to there being any sort of like melody.
Yes.
And Superchunk has good melody.
I 100% agree. And it's part of the reason why it's sort of hard for me, some people will kind of categorize them kind of in like the pop punk sphere.
Sure.
But to me, it was like pop punk was always more about like the hooks were like the rhythm. The hooks were, if you listen to Green Day, there's not like, especially early Green Day, it's not like there's like melodies. It's more like there's like this kind of beat to it, and then there's singing, and so you're kind of like shaking your head and going, there isn't like melody, in the sense. But like, I think that's the benefit of having like a second guitar player where you can really like have some leads and you can kind of do some fun stuff with that.
Yeah. I think the pop punk also tends to be a little bit more polished, and this is definitely like, it's rough, but it's not like jagged. I'm using weird words to try and describe like what you're listening to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is unpolished. It's not like, it doesn't sound like they had some super fancy sound engineer mixing all of their stuff. But like, it's good. It sounds really good.
Yeah, I agree completely. This was their last album on Matador. Laura Balance has said that this was her favorite record that she did with Superchunk. She just kind of, she actually did an interview years ago where she ranked all the Superchunk albums top to bottom. That was just what the interviewer did. Like, they kind of made, like, rank your own stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. And she actually mentioned, she was like, I was tired of Slack, motherfucker. We've played it so many freaking times, and it's just a different part of my life now. But she said that this was her favorite. And, this was the period where, like, they were kind of big enough where they could quit their day jobs. They quit the Kinkos, and they were running, Merge as a record label. Mostly just releasing, like, their friends' 7 inches and singles and EPs and stuff like that.
Sure.
But, like, between that and the band, they were able to, like, make a living doing that. Whatever living that would be.
Hell yeah.
But, yeah. And so I can kind of see why this might be sort of, like, a really fun part of the story or whatever. In fact, at this point, Merge was doing pretty well. They actually got a distribution deal with Touch and Go, the Chicago label that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Kind of a big indie label. Matador was about to sign with Atlantic to do, like, a distribution deal with them.
Dang.
And Superchunk, like, was considering kind of sticking with Matador, but we're kind of like, hey, like, we can make our own albums with Merge through Touch and Go, like, doing distribution. Why don't we just do it ourselves? And so they decide that they're just going to go forward on their own label.
Nice.
Like, they could have been signed to a major label if they wanted to at this point. Like, they were being shopped for it. There were other bands from Chapel Hill who were signing, but they decided that they wouldn't do that. And Jim Wilbur, the guitarist, said in an interview that it wasn't really an ideological thing. It was just sort of practical. Like, they didn't think that they were ever going to be Nirvana. Like, they didn't think they were going to be big, huge rock stars. So being sustainable was kind of more important. Being able to kind of control.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bad news, though. Mac and Laura, after being in a 5-year relationship, break up around this time. Yeah.
Did they release their rumors?
So the fourth album, called Foolish,
Uh-huh.
comes out in 1994. This is their first album on Merge. They work with a producer named Brian Paulson, and they record it at Steve Albini's Pachyderm Studios.
Uh-huh.
Pachyderm is where Nirvana recorded In Utero the year before.
Dang.
So, like, pretty big deal. Apparently, they toured from North Carolina to Minnesota and recorded for a week and then toured back. Like, that's what they had to do.
I mean, clever, yeah.
Yeah, that's what everybody was doing at the time.
Sure.
But I think they kind of mentioned that, like, usually they were recording in town, so it was a little bit easier. They didn't have as many time constraints. This one, they had to do everything in a week. And so it kind of has, like, I don't know the way to put this, but there's like a vitality, you know,
Sure.
where, like, they had to get it done. Because of this breakup, Mac is writing about some different stuff, and he's bringing in some different sounds, more like feelings, and like there's some moodiness to it. You know, it's like songs are about like the relationship and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The first song on the record, Like a Fool, it's a great song, but it's like immediately like way more chill and slow and quiet than everything else they'd done up to this point. Driveway to Driveway is like this pretty kind of slow, almost ballady kind of song. Not really a ballad, but like it's, again, not like anything else they've done, and it's kind of like a signature song for them. Like, people really love it. People are going to hate me for not picking either of those two songs as the one to listen to here.
Off of this album.
Yeah, and I love both of those songs. My two favorite songs from this album are Water Wings, which is kind of a retelling of Icarus, sort of. Again, another great like sing-along chorus. Probably the song that sounds the most like early Superchunk, but it's really fun. And then the one that we're going to play here is the first part, that being the name of the song. Mm-hmm. The first part is very obviously about their relationship and it ending. And it's really moody and dark and slow and very different vibe than a lot of their other stuff. You know, Superchunk is typically considered like a high energy, like fun band.
Yeah.
But like Foolish was kind of the album where they started to experiment with other stuff. And I think this is emblematic of that. So we're going to listen to that now.
All right, let's go.
So who was it?
Yeah, so we just watched the video, and at the very end of the video, there's like a cutout on like this. Okay, there's a bunch of teenagers having a party and they're slam dancing to music, and on the door there's a cutout of like a '90s heartthrob guy, and I'm like, is that fucking Joey Lawrence? And it is. I found the exact picture. It's Joey Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't get that video.
No, I don't either.
But I get that song.
Yeah. The line "one good minute could last me a whole year," like that's some mountain goat shit right there. It's so good.
Yeah. Funny thing about mountain goats, we'll be talking about them later.
Ooh.
Yes. So that line in particular, to me, as somebody who has been in a failing relationship that has lasted way longer than it should have, that is like, I feel that so bad.
Yeah.
That like, oh, you have a good day, and suddenly you think, oh, the last 6 months where I was miserable don't matter anymore because I feel good right now, and then you keep persisting even though you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, we're drunk in the selfless, relentless caresses. How long must the first part last before we make our respective messes?
Yeah.
That's just like a, holy shit, dude.
Ah.
Yeah, like, wow, man. And the part where he says, and like I said, I don't really get the video a whole lot, but I know that they will only haunt me, and then it's just a black room with Mac and Laura on either side of it.
Yeah.
Is like, wow, that's like very direct.
Yeah.
But that's like, it's really good.
It's a good song. It's a really good song. Yeah. And like, to write a song about a breakup in the band as the band is still together and actively recording and touring.
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be a rough thing to do. And then to like continue to make music and write and tour with that person. Mm-hmm. Like, other bands have imploded because of that.
Yeah. Laura actually said that, when they toured on these songs, she didn't really know what they were about because you don't like hear the lyrics very well and stuff,
Sure.
when you're playing. And then when they were recording it, she was like, "Oh my god!" Like I knew that these songs would be about it, but like, wow,
yeah.
She said like there were times when they were playing where she was like jumping up and down, like trying to be excited, and like tears were stringing down her face.
Yeah. If you wrote a song about how like there's no more love in our relationship, like I would be sobbing also.
They didn't really talk too much about why they broke up, and I'm sure it's really personal. But I have to imagine, like, basically they've been together for 5 years, and those entire 5 years they have just been on the road. Like they've never had a chance to like just be the two of them, and like,
I mean, yeah, in the music video, the music video version of themselves, they're like in a house and there are kids around, and they don't have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. Foolish is generally considered like probably by fans like their favorite record. Like it's the die hard, like everyone loves Foolish kind of thing, you know. By the way, the album cover, I can show you it right here. That image right there, that was actually painted by Laura.
Oh, rad.
Yeah, and she said that she sort of painted it separate from the album, and then they used it, and people always ask her like, "Oh, what's the imagery mean?" and stuff. She's like, "I think you're overthinking it a lot, but definitely lots of people have gotten into it." She's actually done a couple of the album covers. We'll get to one later on, where she did it as well. Yeah, this one was critically acclaimed.
I would bet.
People, the first few albums people really liked, but there was a certain amount of like, well, it's a little one note. Like, it's good, like they're getting better at it, and like they're making, great songs, but they're kind of just doing the one thing. This one they really like increase their depth, I think. Their next release was another single B-side compilation called Incidental Music, which is a great name.
Yes, it is.
Probably the big standout from that is they did a cover of 100,000 Fireflies by the Magnetic Fields.
Oh, okay.
The Magnetic Fields were a band on Merge.
Uh-huh.
I'm not super familiar with them, but people really like the Magnetic Fields. It's another one of those like indie bands that is like been very influential and people talk about a lot.
No, to you, dear listener, 100,000 Fireflies is not the Owl City song.
No.
That is a different song.
No.
That is 10,000 Fireflies.
Yeah, this is by a factor of 10 more Fireflies.
More Fireflies.
And so therefore it's better.
Yeah, per song second, I guess.
Yeah. You would not believe your eyes.
You wouldn't.
Yeah, if 100,000 Fireflies fucking just kicked your ass.
I wouldn't actually.
They just fucking picked you up and slammed you down.
one giant fist of fireflies blinking on and off, just wah, flop. Way
So-
off topic, sorry.
Speaking of working really hard,
Yeah.
On the Mouth came out in 93. Foolish came out in 94. They're going to release their next album.
That's a fast turnaround for albums.
Their next album, Here's Where the Strings Come In, is 95.
Oh, gosh.
Just 3 straight years, 3 straight albums. And this is like their creative peak. Like, this is
Yeah.
the time period when people typically think that they were making their best stuff. And I'm inclined to agree.
I mean, there was a period in the 2000s when Rihanna was pumping out an album like every single year, and then she stopped for like decades and had a couple of kids and like frankly go off queen. But also Rihanna was not writing all of her own music.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine how difficult those years were.
Yes. So their 5th album, Here's Where the Strings Come In, it's their best album.
Uh-huh.
In my opinion, I think it's their best album. A lot of people have it as their best album. It's certainly their most popular, like, best-selling album, because they released it themselves, so they know.
Yeah.
It's definitely the one that sold the most. And it also kind of had the most, like, pop culture relevance for the time. For example, there's a song on there called Green Flowers, Blue Fish, which was recorded for the Johnny Mnemonic soundtrack.
Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, you know,
Okay.
the Keanu Reeves
Yeah, yeah,
film.
yeah.
That one's on that. Their lead single, Hyper Enough, was probably their biggest hit song.
Uh-huh.
Like, the song that, like, aside from maybe Slack Motherfucker, which is kind of like their indie anthem that they still play, like, Hyper Enough is the song that most people know from them. It was on Tromeo and Juliet.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
It was also on the Yes Man soundtrack in 2008, the movie with Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
It's also how I first heard of Superchunk, because it was on the NCAA Football 2006 soundtrack. I'm going to go on a little sidetrack, dear listeners, here, and this is going to be absolutely wild, and none of you will believe me, but you just have to take my word for it. This is insane. So, let me set the scene. The year's 2005, and, like, 12, 13-year-old Donovan is not really that into music.
Uh-huh.
Like, I liked some music, but, like, I wasn't into, like, popular music at the time. I was mostly a fan of, like, the Beatles and Queen, like, stuff I was listening to in the car with my parents, Simon and Garfunkel, that kind of stuff. Maybe a little bit of They Might Be Giants. But I was a big sports fan at the time, and I was a big video game fan. And so NCAA Football 2006 was a sports video game.
Yeah.
Way up my alley. I was a big Ohio State fan, Columbus, all that kind of nonsense. In all of the previous NCAA football games, they just played the fight songs. But this one, they added a new game mode where you, like, instead of playing as the team, you were just, like, one guy going through college. So you had to, like, RP, you had to take little tests, to get good grades so you could stay on the team and all that kind of stuff.
That's adorable.
And so part of that was that they changed what the soundtrack was. There were the school fight songs, but there was also, like, a soundtrack of what they considered to be, like, college alternative rock.
Yeah, the stuff that you would hear on a college radio station.
I'm going to read you this list of artists.
Okay.
This is fucking insane.
It is going to be like that one, what is it? What was that band? Was it like the Pixies or something? That one, they had like one show and then everybody who was at that show went off and started a band themselves. Or is that Velvet Underground?
Yes, Velvet Underground, I think is who you're thinking about. So here we go. Atomic Garden by Bad Religion. Train in Vain by The Clash. Me, Myself, and I by De La Soul. Teenage FBI by Guided by Voices. Bad Scene Everybody's Fault by Jawbreaker. Know It All by Lagwagon. Lady Killers by Lush. This is Shangri-La by Mother Love Bone. More Than Toast by The Mr. T Experience. Kill Your Television by Ned's Atomic Dustbin. Jeff Wears Birkenstocks by NoFX. Debaser by The Pixies. Out All Night by the Pie Tasters, Nowhere by Therapy, and Hyper Enough by Superchunk.
Wow.
I cannot stress to you how about 12 of the bands that I just mentioned were, like, hugely foundational to my music taste.
Well, I mean, it's also like, if the point was to try and find like bands that sounds like they would be on college radio, like they just sent somebody to go listen to a bunch of college radio stations.
Yeah.
Like there was one guy and that was his job and he fucking killed it.
Yeah. Jawbreaker is probably a future episode of My Thing, Your Thing.
Sure.
Like, absolutely amazing. The Pixies, I of course, hugely influential. Guided by Voices, hugely influential. Mother Love Bone became Pearl Jam, who was a huge band.
Yeah.
Like, this is insanity. And, I like Lagwagon and Mr. T Experience is kind of like fun 90s pop punk too. Like
Sure.
Bad Religion, The Clash, like classic punk bands. It's amazing that this had more to do with, like, this football video game had more to do with the music that I listened to when I, like, became a musician than, like, anything that came out at the time, anything my friends were listening to. I don't really know how to describe how influential it was. You know, it was like Guitar Hero and Rock Band and this. Like, and like Tony Hawk.
Yeah,
Like,
of course, yes.
I was just, like, really into it. And I didn't even get into Superchunk kind of because of this. I would later on get into Superchunk and then go, oh shit, I know this song already because it was on that soundtrack.
I want to really quickly explain why I had the reaction that I did to Tromeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
So, dear listeners, if you don't know, Troma is a movie studio who put out a bunch of movies in like the 70s and 80s. And they were all very low budget and very, I want to say boundary pushing as the way to describe it. A lot of them had themes that would like disgust and or horrify like the average suburban mom. There was a period in my life where I was like trying to like seek out as much subversive media as I could. There was like a whole summer where I only read banned books, and so I
this is why I love Hannah.
I also, like, you know, I heard about Troma movies. Well, so first, like, you know, my dad had this book about like cult movies and the John Waters Pink Flamingos, which is like described as the most disgusting movie ever made. I couldn't find that, but I could find Tromeo and Juliet by Troma, and that was another movie that was described as like terrible and horrible and disgusting, and so I watched it, of course. And it's weird that there is an art house case to be made for like a close reading of Tromeo and Juliet. Yeah. But also there's just a shit ton of incest in that movie. Like
gross.
Like a bunch of incest in that movie. And so it's kind of wild to me that Superchunk had a song in there, and fantastic. I don't know that I recommend watching any Troma movies. Probably don't do that. I don't even know if you can find them because I don't know if they're probably not streaming anywhere. Like at this point, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get your hands on a Troma movie, I have to assume.
Sure.
But that's why I had the reaction that I had.
So, after talking about Hyper Enough and how important that was, that's not the one from this album that we're going to listen to.
Of course not.
I'm sorry. That one has a music video. It's pretty fun. You should watch it. They all, like, the band all goes to therapy, and it's pretty fun. Instead, we're going to listen to track 7. Or is it track 6? Doesn't matter. Detroit Has a Skyline. In the way that the first part is kind of like the really sad breakup song, Detroit Has a Skyline to me is kind of the like getting over the breakup song. And it's beautiful and angry and hopeful and energetic. And on that list, when people voted for the best Superchunk song, they voted for this one. This is not a single. This is just like an album cut. And I already picked this as the one that I was going to listen to because it's my favorite Superchunk song.
Nice.
It's the best one by far. When they played it live, I cried. Aww. I love this song. Detroit Has a Skyline too.
That was really good.
Yeah. That one really speaks to me in a lot of ways. I love the no architect could have designed this view.
He could not have known about you.
Could not have known about you.
Yeah.
You know, Detroit has a skyline too. Like, to me, like, maybe I'm misinterpreting, maybe I'm not getting the intent, but like, to me, that's such a, like, I am choosing to see what happened to us not as a negative. That, like, it might not have it worked, you know, I had a crush, nothing works out, but you know what? This shit is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still liking where we're at, you know, and I just I needed that song. I went through a time in my early 20s where I, like, was in a long-term relationship and it ended, and then I was in another, like, shorter relationship and it ended, and I felt a lot of guilt and a lot of, like, horrible feelings, and that song, like, helped me a lot.
Yeah, I can.
You know?
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's on the list for me, and you know, it's great. I love it. Superchunk fans who like this record a lot, and most of them do, there's this run in the middle of the album, starting with Sunshine State, all the way through a song called Animated Airplanes Over Germany. Sunshine State, Detroit Has a Skyline, Eastern Terminal, Animated Airplanes. That run of 4 songs is awesome. It's a great, like, just, like, middle section of the album. People talk about it. And you know, in the album, he talks about track 6 and 7 again and again. Like, that's Detroit Has a Skyline and Eastern Terminal, and, like, those are great songs. Highly, highly recommend. It is absolutely their best-selling album. It's their most popular album, you know, by most standards, you know. It's not the one that if you're, like, a diehard, like, oh, I'm so cool, I love Superchunk fan, like, a lot of them pick, like, Foolish or On the Mouth or something, but, like, if you've only ever heard one Superchunk album, it's probably this one.
Yeah.
I like this one a lot. This is a top, like, I don't know, if I made, like, my top 10 records of the 90s, this would probably be on the list.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What year did this come out?
95.
Okay.
And in a way, I kind of think it coming out in 95 is sort of a blessing and a curse for them. Because 95, what the hell was happening in music? You know, 92 to 94, like, that was grunge. Everyone was really excited about alternative. You know, 94, Kurt Cobain dies. It didn't really have the momentum that it had. And I think that Superchunk kind of, I don't want to say gets left behind because of it, but this is probably, like, the peak of their popularity. It really only goes downhill from here as far as, like, you know, people caring about them in general.
Sure.
Which is unfortunate, but that's how it goes.
It is kind of interesting. I don't think that they're ever going to be, like, you know, late 90s, like, optimistic pop or whatever, but, like, it is kind of interesting that, like, at this point, looking towards the future, they are having, like, a little bit more of, like, an optimistic outlook. And then in the late 90s, everybody was like, what are we upset about? Like, you know, Cold War's over.
Yeah.
The economy is really good. Let's listen to some Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, the pop culture trends are always very interesting to me because they always seem to come, like, years after when they make sense, you know? That's just kind of how it goes because it takes time for artists to, like, do their craft. And
yes.
You know. Hey everyone, so this episode got a little longer than we were expecting, so I'm splitting it up into 2. So this is Superchunk Part 1, and then Superchunk Part 2 will come out next time, and you're gonna hear some more really excellent music, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening. You can find us at mythingyourthing.com or at mythingyourthingpod on social media. Thanks to RK Maroon for letting us use their song Macaroni Art from the EP You Can't Eat Horses. You can get it at rkmaroon.bandcamp.com. If you have a thing you think we should talk about, email us at mythingyourthingpod@gmail.com, and maybe that could be our thing.